This is the Dover Download Podcast. My name is Christopher Parker, and for the past 25 years, I've had the pleasure of working with, learning from, and talking to a variety of volunteer, staff, and community members. This podcast explores conversations, activities, and a variety of policies and programs which exist here in Dover to improve the community in one way or another. While we cover a lot of topics on the podcast, we watch and see where people's interests lie and how many times an episode gets played or replayed. We've noticed over years that housing is one of those topics that gets a lot of interest, and it makes sense. So today we're going to continue our conversations about housing. We're going to introduce you to Abby Galloway-Burke, our new housing planner. She's going to walk us through the recently released Ad Hoc Commission on Housing's report. Abby, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm very glad to join the Dover team. I have a background in housing in our community. I've worked at the Community Action Partnership of Strafford County a little after COVID, working on some housing programs. I've also worked at Granite United Way, facilitating some landlord incentive programs to try to increase access to affordable housing all over the state of New Hampshire. I recently purchased a house in Dover, and so I'm very excited about that. I'm originally from Massachusetts, and I went to college in Boston.
One of the things that's interesting that you just said, there's a lot to unpack there, but One of the things that I like is, as our housing planner, our housing advocate, you have firsthand experience buying a house recently.
Yes.
So unlike myself, who bought a house a while ago, and I'm sure there are parallels between when I bought my house and when you bought your house, but there's also a lot of difference in the way that the financing works. There's a lot of difference in what is available, how it's available, et cetera. But I really appreciate that you can bring that firsthand experience of having been in the thick of it, trying to find a place.
Yeah, so I was looking for my first house. We were looking in kind of surrounding areas because we were a little priced out of Dover, and looking in communities where we hadn't lived before, where it was not our first choice. Some of the houses were not really something we wanted to purchase, but it was kind of limited options out there. And then we saw a house in Dover. It's actually a duplex. And so we put an offer in on the house, and someone else got it. And so I was disappointed when I walked into this house. It felt like my house. It's an 1880s farmhouse. It has a lot of character. It has a beautifully maintained garden. The woman who lived there, she lived there for 40 years. So there are perennials everywhere. So I was really disappointed. And a few weeks later, the house had come back on the market. It had fallen through. Also, a few things happened at the right time. Rates had dropped. So we were able to offer a little bit more. I put 5 offers on this house, and we got it. And I was so excited. And our original intention was to just rent the apartment out to the public, find somebody else. In between when our offer was accepted and when we closed, my mom's living situation had changed, and she asked if she could be our renter. And at first I said no. I was like, I'm not sure. But
you're like, I spent years getting away from you.
Yes. My fiance was like, this is the best thing ever. And so it really goes back to like old school, multi-generational living. And without the extra income of the unit, we wouldn't be able to afford I hope it's our forever home. I really, really love it. Every room had wallpaper, including the closets. It has the like skyline of Portsmouth on wallpaper. And
what era?
I think like the 80s.
Yeah. Interesting.
There's a big old coal furnace in the basement that's not functional but hasn't been taken out. Our next door neighbor, he's 80 years old, and it was his grandparents' house, the house that we live in. And on our first day, he gave us a photo of his dad as a young boy, so it was probably the 20s, of that family in front of our house. We have a huge pine tree out front, and you could see the pine tree a little bit smaller over 100 years ago.
That's great.
We have a little barn out back, and I'm trying to keep the flowers alive. It's my first gardening experience. So yeah, There's some trials and tribulations, but it worked out exactly the way it should, and I'm very excited. My commute is very short to Dover. I can live and work in the community where I want to be, which I feel very grateful and lucky that I'm able to do that.
That's great. It's a great story.
Mm-hmm.
Can you walk the listener through, and I know you're still new with us, but what you are experiencing on a day-to-day basis? What's your job like? What sort of activities are in your jurisdiction?
Yeah, so I have been working with the ad hoc committee to address community housing needs. They've been working on a report for a little over 2 years now, and it was just finalized and presented to the city council in late July. And so my work has been kind of speaking with them, adding some data points in there, and finalizing an executive summary. The report is quite extensive. They worked very hard on it. It's a lot of months and time and effort. So it is 45 pages. But there is an executive summary that really pulls out the nuts and bolts, and it's only 5 pages with some graphs, and you can really see how the market has shifted in the past 10 years and what is facing our renters and homeowners today in the city of Dover and developers, like how much houses median sale price has gone up, how much fair market rent, even set by HUD, which is sometimes a little below what the actual market can support, has still gone up $500 in the last 5 years. I've also been working with Dave Carpenter on CDBG, so Community Development Block Grant programs. We are trying to increase accessibility around the city, including some universal changing stations and public bathrooms to remove barriers to make sure that Dover is inclusive and welcoming for all residents, regardless of their abilities. I also have been participating with a Home for All coalition of the Greater Seacoast. It brings together different stakeholders, including welfare directors, nonprofits, developers, and York is included in that. So it also brings a unique perspective of kind of the challenges and strengths that New Hampshire has compared to some of our neighboring towns. And so I work with them to just facilitate the conversation of what we need in our community and how we're going to get there.
There is a lot on your plate.
Yes, there is.
Is it what you expected, or is it more, or?
I will say it's a little different than what I had been doing in the past. It is a little more macro level. So not some of my other prior roles really was placing families in homes. And so this is more long-term, really changing the housing landscape and what is kind of offered and a different take on how we can address the housing challenges that we're facing. So I really like looking at it as a different avenue. I did have an internship in the State House in Massachusetts in college. And so some of that is a little similar and going back to that of like even working in a big old New England building.
So let's dig into the report. As you said, it's 45 pages, which is both accurate, but also I would say a little misleading, only in the sense that 15 of those pages are the recommendations.
Yes.
And then I think there's like a 2-page appendix at the end with abbreviations, and which I think it's good to explain jargon.
Yeah.
Still 30 pages of meat, as it were, or backup information. When I was reviewing it, I found something that you just hit on to be very accurate. It's not just a woe is us. That there are some good educational components about what builders experience. We always focus, I think, as a culture on, I can't believe it cost me X amount a month in rent or in mortgage, or what the Fed has set the rate at, or what that allows from a buying power. But if we don't understand that there is a cost that helps drive those expenses, I think that is somewhat lost. And I've said here on the podcast before, in 2019, we did probably our first presentation of the council about the cost of home building and where rents were being derived from. And at the time, it was like $120 a square foot to build a house.
Yep.
I think now it's closer to $250, not even including the land cost or the costs for entitlements, or in this day and age, there's a good chance you're going to get sued. So you probably have an attorney involved. So those costs have really elevated. And so I think that's one of the things. I'm not trying to whitewash the cost, because it is, rental costs are important, but it's not as easy as saying developers should charge less.
Yeah.
Or that house really doesn't need to cost me X. It really could cost Y. But if you think at $250 a square foot, a 1,000 square foot house, which no one builds, it's really fascinating to get that full picture, which I think the report tries to convey.
Mm-hmm. And all of the upfront costs are purchasing the land, getting all the permitting, hiring a civil engineer to get a build going. Most of that is out of pocket from the developer. That financing isn't really available until further down the process. And that's just for single family houses. I think it costs over $400,000 to build a unit in a multifamily project. So it has to pencil out on both ends. Like, it has to be a way where it can work for everybody, and not every project is going to be able to work for everybody.
Right. What are some of the highlights of the report that you think people should review? Obviously, you've distilled it into the executive summary, so that's a good place to look for. But if someone wants to go into the actual report, are there things that you would point to as either the background material, this is a good place to get educated, or here's some elements to call attention to?
I think there's a lot of work in the beginning, the kind of beginning pages of the report that really give context to the challenges that we're facing and kind of how they've come about, and really who they're facing. Like, the workforce is having a really hard time being able to afford housing. In part of the executive summary, there's a graph that shows average wages in Strafford County on different levels of the workforce and how it relates to the median sales price. And so that's really a unique way to tie wages to the cost of housing. And it's affecting nurses at Wentworth Douglas, teachers, firefighters. And I feel like community engagement and education as to who is being affected by the housing crisis and the challenges that people struggle with just trying to find a place to live when they have a full-time job, when they're working, when there's 2 adults and no kids. Right. It's still difficult. So,
there's a couple different metrics you can use. And one that we've talked about before is the living wage metric. And what's scary is the city, we try not to be the highest paid, but not be the lowest when we're trying to attract employees such as yourself.
Yep.
And we try to be aware of what the surrounding communities that we might see are competing for our staff. And we pay, I think, fairly. But when you look at what a living wage, we're barely in that category. A living wage, I think it's $29 an hour in the Seacoast. There are not a lot of people that are earning that. And granted, it could be over 2 spouses that are in that realm. But one of the things that I remember reading very clearly a few years ago was there's a really interesting correlation. We try to say you should have 30% of your expenses are associated with home costs. So it could be rent, it could be insurance, it could be utilities, what have you. That's actually been a fairly consistent metric since like the 70s. What hasn't been consistent is the proximity between wages and that. So we focus on the gap being that the housing costs have gone up. We seem to ignore that wages have not kept track with housing.
Yep. It's been stagnant for 40 years and everything has gone up. Like cost of utilities, like I have a big old house, my oil bill, oh man.
Sure.
And just being...
Why do you need heat?
I know. Like I'll just transport myself to Florida and then I'll get floods and hurricanes or California and my house will be affected by other extreme weather. And so, and Dover's a great place to live. It's highly desirable. Our proximity to major metropolitan areas like Boston, we have the Amtrak, and with remote work, people who are able to have a higher wage can move further out. There's no need for commuters driving an hour and a half every day, and that really affecting how much houses can be sold for. And we have a lot going on in Dover. We're close to the beach. We have great restaurants. It's walkable. There's really a lot of effort been put into making Dover a great place to be, and people are catching on.
One of the things that jumps off that's in the report is that we've made progress and we continue to be a leader looking at housing need and what we can do from a regulatory front, what we can do from a permitting and entitlement front to continue to promote housing.
Yep.
We have not been a community that has said, we're good, go somewhere else. There certainly are some give and takes, and there certainly are some friction at times, but we want new housing. That said, there is a limit to how much a community can provide. And one stat that I saw earlier in July was that 50% of all houses for sale in Maine and New Hampshire are either fixer-uppers or tear-downs. And so the hypothesis of the article was that these become your affordable houses, but then when you get in, you can't afford to make the upgrades, or at least not in the timely fashion you might want to. Yeah. And I think that just opens up a whole new avenue of conversation.
Yeah. And really with every kind of rung of the housing continuum of emergency shelter, subsidized housing, kind of other affordable housing that isn't subsidized, really market rate apartments, starter homes, large waterfront homes. People are getting stuck. There's bottlenecks at every rung. We have an aging population in New Hampshire. We're the second oldest, tied for Vermont now. And there are seniors in Dover who would love to sell their house. They would love to move on from their family home that they've lived for 30 plus years, and there simply is not many options. And because of that, there are less options for young people who are looking to start a family to buy their house.
And one of the things that I think is going to continue to be problematic is folks like my wife and I. We're empty nesters. We live in a 3-bedroom house. It's 1,600 square feet. We could probably live in 600 because it's just the two of us. But I have a 2.35% mortgage rate. I am not going to buy a new house.
Yep.
I'm even downsizing. It just doesn't make sense for me to go from a interest rate that works to a 7% interest rate.
Yeah.
And I think that's keeping a lot of existing homes from coming on the market. And you really need that balance of existing homes and new homes. There's always a need for both, I think.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting to see how we can navigate this. And the beauty is that as a community, we've been able to embrace the grant funding and now working into utilizing the operating budget to fund your position and have that sort of education piece, that awareness piece, and that resource. And you truly are a resource to both staff, the policymakers, and hopefully the community.
I think just having conversations about housing and just makes Dover such a great place to be, and really focusing on the future of we have to figure out solutions, innovative solutions. First up is speaking to the community members. Dover is for Dover residents, and trying to figure out how we're going to maintain the character, the things that everyone loves about being in Dover, while allowing us to prosper and continue to grow in sustainable ways, and to invite more members into our community and have a shift. And on the same thing of having kind of roadblocks on each end of the spectrum, we're seeing younger people staying in apartments longer who have a little more income, who would have been traditionally ready to buy their own house, and they're able to pay more in rent. They want a nice place to live. They're not ready to purchase their house because it's $500,000 plus. And with rates the way they are, it's out of reach. And you were mentioning living wage before. That I'm pretty sure that's for just renters.
Yeah.
Not even like...
Yeah, that's a good clarification.
Yeah, it is just for being able to afford a fair market apartment, which many of them are not set at the HUD fair market. It's a little over $1,900 for a 2-bedroom, and you'd be hard-pressed to find a 2-bedroom for $1,900. And that's, like you said, the living wage is a little over $29. People are struggling, even just hard workers. And people who are not low income or moderate income, who are not the workforce, it's still difficult of putting in offers. The supply is just not touching the demand. Part of the report also focused on zoning, some recommendations, and many of them are already in the works within the planning department and the planning board, the zoning board. Dover has been trying to see what the regulations are, what they have been, and where there is some flexibility to try to meet the needs of the future.
Well, I look forward to having continued conversations with you here and on the day-to-day basis. As I said earlier, I think you're a huge resource for the community, and I'm glad we're able to prioritize that housing has such a need that we need a specific person to focus on that. And you get to work with Uncle Dave, so that's even better.
Oh, look at that. Dave's great.
And look forward to seeing what you and Donna produce from the end of this report, come up with some timelines for implementation. And I know the committee and its 15-page recommendations, there's a lot of things that are across the board. Some are community-based, some are civic-based, some are staff-based. So we'll look forward to seeing some of those implemented.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to trying to see what the real world on the streets version of this report and how we can focus on housing in Dover.
Great. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.
Of the many things that the city clerk's office does, overseeing municipal elections is one of the key functions. Today, City Clerk Jerica Van Silvang-Vizier is going to walk us through what you need to know if you're thinking about running for election this coming November. Jerica, how are you?
I'm doing well, Chris. How are you?
Good. The election's in November.
It is.
And if people want to run, they have a filing period for when they can tell you, I want to run for office. When is that filing period?
The filing period starts Monday, September 8th, and that goes through until Friday, September 19th at 4 p.m.
So 11 days. So roughly 2 working weeks. During that period, someone comes in. What offices are they applying for? What are they interested in running for?
So on our ballot in November, the open offices will be all of our counselors for our city council, which is a counselor for each ward. We have 6 wards, 6 counselors, and then we have 2 at-large counselors and our mayor. And then we also have openings for each ward for the school board, as well as 1 at-large for our school board. And then there'll be election officers for each ward, which is a moderator for each ward, a ward clerk, a supervisor of the checklist, and 3 select persons for each ward.
At some point, we'll have you back, or maybe an election historian, to talk about what some of those other offices are, because I think there's some historic value in those and maybe a different usage today. But all of those need to be applied for.
They do.
Those offices.
They do, yes. Yep.
And is the application a simple piece of paper you can fill out, or do you need to have proof of residency or something that goes along with it?
Yes. So with our city council, you do have to have lived in the city for at least a year. So if you bring your ID, that's really all we'll need. We have all the forms in our office, and we'll go through the forms with each person that files, especially if you're new or haven't filed before. We'll go over them with you.
Is there an age restriction?
You have to be 18.
Okay. Anything else that in this quick pass on that people should know about?
The election is Tuesday, November 4th, and the polls will be open 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Great. One last thing. What's the webpage if people wanted to double check or learn more?
Our website is dover.nh.gov, and it would be under the elections tab.
Great. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Dover Download this week. If you like what you heard, subscribe through your favorite podcast aggregator. And if you have something you want to hear a topic on, let us know. Finally, this is just one of the many ways we share information about the city of Dover. You can subscribe to the Dover Downloads email newsletter every week or other newsletters that we have by going to the City of Dover homepage, www.dover.nh.gov. Have a great week.